All right, you guys. Well, this is Cosmo. He just got neutered, so he's got his little cone. So he's joining me today for the podcast because Kawhi Leonard is officially back in Toronto. He's a Toronto Raptor. We're going to talk about that trade and who won the trade and what this means for both teams. But specifically, obviously, I'm going to talk about Toronto. So let's get to it. All right, so even Cosmo decided to get on this podcast and make some comments here at the top. Kawhi Leonard back in Toronto after 7 years with the LA Clippers. It's crazy that it's been 7 years already, pretty much. The trade. Kawhi Leonard back to Toronto. The Clippers get Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, a 2031 and a 2033 unprotected first-round pick, which I'll talk about that in a second, a 2027 first-round swap, and a 2030 and 2033 second-round picks. All right, the second-rounders, obviously, we'll just throw those out the window because people trade those like potato chips. And to be quite frank, I don't really care about second-rounders. I think the rumors about this trade happening have been swirling for 2 days now, mostly because I think the teams were battling between which years these first-round picks were going to be. At first, when this trade came out, it seemed like the Raptors were giving up first-round picks in 2027 and 2029 and a pick swap in 2031. Which at that point, you're like, damn, they're big winners. And even some people were willing to argue that the Raptors gave up too much, which, quite frankly, I don't know how you could have made the case at that point because you obviously assume this next year the Raptors are going to be contenders. So that first rounder is at the bottom of the first round, you assume. And even 2029 would be Kawhi's last year on the team. And again, you got a lot of good young players that they didn't want to give away, and they didn't give away, like CMB, like Jacoby Walter. So the Raptors, even Jamal Shed, seemed to be someone that the Clippers really wanted, and the Raptors held firm. Now, those didn't end up being the picks, right? It ended up being a 2027 first-round pick swap, which won't happen, most likely, unless something catastrophic happens with Toronto and something incredible happens with the Clippers, because the Clippers are most likely going to have a better pick than Toronto in 2027. So that you can almost with certainty throw out the window, right? So now you got the 2031 and 2033 unprotected first. Now that is where it costs you, okay? Because those matter. Because 2031, again, at that point, Kawhi might not be playing basketball. He might be retired at that point. Scotty Barnes would be older. Who knows if you what happens with the young guys? Do they develop? Do they not? And then 2033 is even more of an unknown. However, I like the trade less once I saw that, but I still think this is a win for Toronto, and I think it's a win for the Clippers because for the Clippers, this allows you now, obviously, to get draft capital that you can either use for a trade if you ever want to, if you feel like you're close and you want to get a superstar, then you can trade those Raptor picks, and they're solid picks a few years away. The 2033 is damn near 7 years away. So that is a wild card. The only thing that I will say and why I still think Toronto did great in this trade is because obviously goes without saying what you're getting in Kawhi Leonard, him, CMB, and Scotty Barnes defensively. Good luck scoring on those guys. That's incredible defense right there. Obviously, everyone looks at Kawhi Leonard's scoring, but defensively, this Raptors team is going to be a juggernaut. They already were a really good defensive team. Now you're adding a player like Kawhi Leonard on this defense, who's only going to elevate the other guys, right? If you got Kawhi on you and you want to switch off, you're like, hey, come switch. I don't want Kawhi guarding me. All right, here's CMB. Oh, you don't want him guarding you? Here's Scotty Barnes. Good luck. Good luck. The thing about the picks that we've been kind of trying to figure out ever since, obviously, the draft lottery switched up and they changed the rules on that is the way I see it is it's more of a crapshoot now, right? Nothing's guaranteed. This next season, for example, you look at a team like Brooklyn and a team like Boston. I mean, sure, you would assume that Brooklyn's going to have the better draft pick. But realistically, if Boston ends up being in the play-in tournament, the odds might not be that far apart, right? And so it's more of a crapshoot. Before these new rules took place, you would have said, definitely give me, and you still would, obviously, but you would have said, I want Brooklyn's first rounder without a doubt. It's an easy choice. No doubt about it. That pick's going to be top 10. Well, if they finish with the worst record, there's no guarantee that that's going to be top 10 or top 5. So those picks, listen, I mean, yes, are they valuable? Of course. But I think in terms of trades like this, when you can get a guy like Kawhi Leonard, you gotta take the chance. Now, again, I'm obviously, saying this is a win for Toronto, but where I think they could have held firm and maybe waited a little longer to see if the Clippers would, when playing chicken, if they would have caved, is the fact that you were competing against no one. Kawhi made it known he wants to be in Toronto. So, again, ultimately, it's the 2 second rounders, whatever. It's a pick swap next year, which, again, if the Raptors make the playoffs, I don't see a world in which in the Western Conference the Clippers are going to make the playoffs. So, basically, if the Raptors make the playoffs, that goes away. That pick swap is nothing. It doesn't matter. You're keeping that pick next year, right? You'll have your pick. So it really is just 2 unprotected 2031, 2033 first round picks. You want to get down? Go ahead. What are you going to do with those? And that's where it really becomes a crapshoot. And you're rolling the dice. And you're taking the chance. Look, by then, maybe CMB has developed into an incredible player. Maybe Jacoby Walter is a great scorer. And by then, maybe you're still a playoff team. So at the end of the day, you gave up, a 25th pick in the first round for Kawhi Leonard. And 2 years later, you gave up the 22nd pick for Kawhi Leonard. All right. Then it's a huge win of a trade, right? Now, obviously, if it goes the other way and you have to give up the 2nd pick in the draft and the 10th pick in the draft, well, now it looks like an overpay. But we can't really judge that right now. We have no way of knowing. All we know is, was it worth the risk? And I'm going to tell you right now, I think it was, right? I think for me, it was worth the risk. I think Toronto, come here, buddy. I think Toronto put themselves in the contender map, especially in the East. And look, listen, if you would have told us at the start of the 2019 season, 2018-2019 season, that the Warriors would have met the Raptors in the finals, you would have said, well, the Raptors aren't going to compete for that championship because the Warriors got KD, they got Klay Thompson, they got Steph Curry. And guess what? Injuries happened, circumstance happened, the Raptors ended up being champions. So just like the picks are a crapshoot, if you get in the dance party, if you get into the contender status, it's a crapshoot. That's why, every year, any given, realistically, 5 teams can win the title. And the Raptors just put themselves in that conversation. And it's a crapshoot, just like it's a crapshoot with the picks. So, I'm glad they took that chance. Now, with the Clippers, again, I think it's a good trade for them. They're going young. They're kind of restarting. This is what smart organizations do. You can't always just be on this win now, especially when you don't really have young talent. They got Keaton Wagler, the rookie with the 5th pick this year. That's good for them, and they can start that foundation of getting young pieces. But other than that, they don't really have much. So it's a good trade for the Clippers to gain some capital, let the young guys play, see who develops into great players, just like the Raptors did, right? They did that with Scotty Barnes. They did that with CMB. They did that with Jacoby Walter. They just drafted Allen Graves. Who knows what he'll be? So they got young pieces, and that's why those picks aren't as risky, if you ask me, because they got promising young guys, Toronto does, to where by that point, those guys should be in their prime with a Scotty Barnes that still should be a relatively good player. And at the end of the day, if you end up by that point having to trade a Scotty Barnes, guess what? You may get 2 first-rounders back in those same drafts from a different team where it's a crapshoot, and those picks might be better than your own that you gave up to the Clippers. So, not a big deal to me if you ask me. I think it was a good trade. The Raptors needed to do this. And obviously, I'll break down more what this means as we break down this offseason. But initial thoughts are great job by Toronto and good job by the Clippers getting value back. You didn't want to pay Kawhi. And mostly, it's not even about the value. It is about the value, but it's about the mentality of sticking to a plan that, when you're in this predicament, you can keep trying to force it and try to be, compete and get in the dance and get in the playoffs with Kawhi Leonard, but you're not winning a championship with this team around Kawhi Leonard. So throwing the white flag, restarting, you get Brandon Ingram back and Grady Dick back. And guess what? Brandon Ingram, a year ago, we were told that it was a ridiculous overpay and the Raptors, that's a terrible contract. Suddenly now, doesn't look like a terrible contract. And if he plays well in the first half of the season, Guess what? You could probably get a first-round pick for him too. So at the end of the day, I just think that was a win-win trade, and I'm happy for Toronto because they're back. The Raptors are back with a fresh team, younger than they were the last time they won the championship with Kawhi. And remember, even that team had young guys on it, right? Now, this time around, you're also getting Kawhi. He's more than likely news is that he's going to sign an extension. So you're not just getting him on a one-and-done deal. It's a 3-year deal. So you're giving a runway for those young guys to keep developing. Jacoby Walter, CMB, rotational players, Jamal Shed, right? And you still have big contracts that if you need to trade, they're tradable contracts. They're not great contracts like, Jakob Poeltl, Emmanuel Quickly, but you have moves that you can still make. So again, they positioned themselves to compete for a title in the next 3 seasons, the way I see it, and still managed to keep their young enough talent to where that they could develop so that you kind of protect yourself from those 2031, 2033 picks being a disaster. And you already have a player in Scotty Barnes, who again, I don't ever want to see him traded, but that's a trade asset, right? He's the price of Scotty Barnes, I would say right now, is more expensive than the price of Kawhi Leonard. So if Kawhi Leonard, you gave up 2 first-round picks, right now a team would give up 3 first-round picks for Scotty Barnes. And you assume that if he keeps playing the way he played in that playoff series, that's only going to get even better as you continue moving forward. So it's a good spot to be in. That's my take on that trade. What's LeBron going to do? We'll talk about that. The only thing I'll say is if he goes to Golden State, I'm not even knocking LeBron for that, but I will knock Steph Curry for that because, come on, man. You're supposed to be competing. You're 1 ring behind LeBron. Now you guys want to do it together. You want to give LeBron another ring over you. Again, and maybe they're friends, and that's fine, and you want to play with your buddy, no problem. Obviously, guys are free to do what they do. But competitively speaking, I just could never see a world in which you're competing against someone and chasing, presumably, that ring status over that person. Now you're going to team up. If I'm LeBron, heck yeah. Because now if Steph gets another ring, I'm getting a ring too, so I'm always going to keep him 1 below me. But when it comes to counting rings, kind of weak on Steph's part to want a guy like LeBron there that's what LeBron's got on him right now. Aside from you want to call the legacy and he's played longer, fair enough. But the rings, right? LeBron's got a ring over Steph Curry and they've gone at it in multiple series in the finals. We'll see what ends up happening. I'm not going to jump the gun there, but anyway, as news breaks, we'll talk about that. I saw Dean Wade got a 4-year, $39 million deal from the Sixers. Did we not watch the playoffs and see that Dean Wade was getting like 4 points and 3 rebounds a game? I don't like it. I don't like that signing at all for the Sixers, but maybe they'll prove me wrong. I'll talk to you guys soon.